Okay, now this is chapter number 5, that is trigonometry. All right, okay. So let's get started. Okay, now let's talk about right angle triangles for now. Okay, and let's see how exactly questions would be, and let's just talk about some examples as well. So I would directly start off with an example and things would get clear with it. This is example number 1. So example number 1 says cos theta is basically equal to root 5 divided by 3, where your theta is greater than 0 and it is less than 90 degrees. Okay, so this is basically to indicate that they are talking about a right angle triangle. Okay, and the question says find the exact values of cos theta square, and then the second part is sine theta, and then the third part is tan theta. Okay, all right. Now you know that cos theta is basically equal to root 5 by 3, and using the value of cos, you need to find out cos square. Okay, we can do that by simply squaring it. But how do we find sine and tan? For this, you need to understand that this is basically an information about a right angle triangle. So let me just make one right angle triangle according to the scenario. Okay, this is a triangle. Now we know that the ratios are sine theta equals perpendicular over hypotenuse. Some people have, okay, then it is curly brown hair through proper brushing. Okay, it could be that you guys have your own method. This is how we discussed in the early classes. So yes, so cos is basically base over hypotenuse. So this, imagine this is your right angle, this is, let's say, your theta. So if this is your theta, base is root 5, this is going to be your base, and the hypotenuse side is 3. So in order to find out sine and tan, we need to have this side. How do we find the side? It's a right angle triangle. You can easily use Pythagoras theorem and find out the side. Okay, so this side is basically the perpendicular side in our scenario. So perpendicular square plus root 5 square is basically equal to 3 square. I know how to use Pythagoras theorem. So we square the two small sides, we add that, and we equate it to the square of the longest side. That's basically the hypotenuse side. Okay. Next, perpendicular square would come as it is. This would become 5. This is basically 9. And perpendicular square would be equal to 4, and this would mean that the perpendicular side is basically equal to 2. So finally we got this as 2. Now you can easily solve all these parts. You can find cos square, you can find sine theta, you can find tan theta. Okay, in order to find cos square theta, you're just supposed to square cos theta. So you will do root 5 by root 3 square, and this square would cancel this, and this square would square the denominator, that was 3, and this would become 5 by 9. They have specifically mentioned that you need to give the exact values, so please do not convert this answer to decimals. Okay, 5 by 9 is going to be your answer. For sine theta, it's very simple. Sine theta is perpendicular over hypotenuse. So perpendicular side is basically 2 and hypotenuse side is 3. And finally, for tan theta, it's perpendicular over base. So perpendicular side is 2 and base is √5. This is going to be the answer. Yes. Any difficulties with this? Anything that you guys were not able to understand?
No, miss, everything's clear.
Okay, so this was just a question that would not come directly in your exam, but you would be using this knowledge somewhere in order to solve questions. Okay, the next part of the same question is somewhat relevant to what we were discussing. Okay, the next part says show that 1 minus tan square theta divided by cos theta plus sine theta for the same scenario is basically 3√5 minus 6 divided by 5. And I'll just write the values of sine, cos, and tan that we were able to find in the previous part. So sine was 2 by 3, cos was given, that is √5 by 3, and tan was basically 2 divided by √5. Okay. Yes, now this is basically something that you need to prove, and it's simple. You're only supposed to plug in the value, simplify this, and make your final answer look like this one. Okay, this is basically the challenge. Okay, so let's quickly try doing it. It's 1 minus tan square. This is tan. It's 2 divided by √5. 2 divided by √5. I need to square this. Divided by cos theta. That's √5 by 3 plus sine theta, that is 2 by 3. This is what we have, okay? So in the first step, I've just plugged in all the values. Let's quickly simplify this. This square would basically be square on both the numerator and denominator of the fraction. So 1 plus 2 squared would become 4 divided by √5 squared would basically become 5. And then I can add these two fractions because the denominator is same. So I will just write it down as one fraction. This is √5 plus 2. Okay, we are still not done. We still need to do some more extra steps and then things would get better. Okay. All right. This is an issue. 1 second. This is minus, okay? All right. Next, I'm going to just, take LCM in the numerator, like right here, to simplify both the fractions. The LCM would be 5. This would become 5 minus 4 divided by √5 plus 2 divided by 3. And this is going to be 1 divided by 5. And this is going to be √5 plus 2 divided by 3. Okay, so obviously we need to compare our working with whatever we have in the question because our reference point has to be what we need to prove. This is what we need to prove. All right. Okay. At this point exactly, let me do one more step just so things get better. And then I would want you guys to give your input because this is something that we already know. I can write it as 1 by 5 divided by root 5 plus 2 divided by 3. How do we simplify fractions? Whenever we have division sign, I'll write it as 1 by 5 multiplication. We will take the reciprocal over here. It is 3 divided by root 5 plus 2. And finally, upon simplification, I would get 3 divided by 5 root 5 plus 2. This is what I have. And still, I am not done yet. What do you think? What should be the next step? Let me just zoom out. Yes. There's one thing that we used to do in order to simplify such things. Whenever we used to have a third in the denominator, what do we do? It's related to this. A plus B into A minus B. Okay. Now I can clearly see one thing, that if I look at what I need to prove in the question, I do not have the third in denominator, but in my case, root 5 plus 2 is in denominator. This means that I need to get rid of this root 5 from the denominator. Okay. How do I do that? I would be able to do that if I multiply this thing with a fraction that is basically equivalent to 1, because we can certainly multiply anything with 1. So it could be a fraction, it could be any other thing, and that fraction is going to be root 5 minus 2. It would be root 5 minus 2, right? Why do we do this? Because this is a plus b, this is a minus b, and I can write this as a squared minus b squared. Yes, do you guys remember this now?
Yes, miss.
Okay, so this, in the numerator, it would become 3 multiplied by root 5. 3 root 5 minus 3 into 2 would become 6 divided by 5 into root 5 square minus 2 square. Okay, let me just simplify this. In the numerator, it would be 3 root 5 minus 6. That is already done. We were able to prove the numerator directly. For the denominator, it is 5 multiplied by this, and this would cancel. I would get 5 minus 2 squared is 4. And finally, I get the desired outcome. This is going to be the final answer. Yes, Munja and Rafi. Any difficulties with the idea? This is something that we have been practicing in O levels as well. This was called rationalization. Anything that you were not able to understand over here?
No, miss, everything's clear. Miss, can you give us 1 second to write it?
Yes, sure. 1 minute. Are you able to see the entire question now? Wait 1 second. Yeah, here you go.
Okay, miss, I took the screenshot. I'll do it again later on.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. Munja, what about you?
Um,
Yes.
I think the last part, but I think it's just that I need to just look at it on my later on. But I think
1 second. Let me just go through this again. It's fine. This is the first question. Wait, let me explain this again. It's completely fine. Okay. So you had something in the question that you need to prove. Okay. Tan, cosine, these three things are irrelevant because the values were there. You just plugged in the values, and this is what we got. This is what we got. Now we need to simplify this, do a few more steps, and make this pink square or rectangular thing like this yellow encircled thing. Okay, how do we do that? Initially, I just simplified. So 1 came as it is. Then I just did 2 squared. That gave me 4. And then this 2 and this root were cancelled, and I got 4 by 5 for the denominator. I was able to see that both these fractions have same denominator, that was 3. So I just added the numerators, and this is what I got. 5 minus 4 gave me 1, divide by 5, and then everything was there. At this point, I was not able to analyze the situation directly. So I wrote it this way: 1 by 5 divided by the other fraction. And in O levels, we used to simplify fractions this way, that whenever you had two fractions with a division sign between them, we used to convert the division sign to multiplication, and it's math. So you can't do anything one-sided. You need to balance it out. Okay, how do we balance it out? By taking the reciprocal of the second fraction, that is root 5 plus 2 by 3. So I took the reciprocal, it gave me 3 divided by root 5 plus 2. And this is what I had. I was still not done. And when I compared my working with what I had to prove, I could see that here I have root 5 in the numerator, but in my case, it was coming in the denominator. This is how we get rid of surds. This is what you would be doing time and again. And this is something that you need to remember for A2 as well. Those who would be giving composites should know. Always remember, whenever you need to get rid of the surd from denominator, we rationalize. This is what the method is called. How do we rationalize? We just multiply by a fraction that is equivalent to 1. Why is it equivalent to 1? Because I can cancel the numerator and denominator, right? So it's equivalent to 1. I can multiply it with 1. That's mathematically correct. What two numbers or what numerator or denominator do I take in order to rescue the situation? So I have root 5 plus 2. I know that if I have a plus b, and then if I have a minus b, I can write that thing as a squared minus b squared. So this is what I had. I wanted to multiply it by a minus b, so I multiplied it by root 5 minus 2. Since it's maths, I can't only multiply it, so I just added root 5 minus 2 in numerator as well, just so it's mathematically balanced. Next, when these two things were being multiplied, think about it as if it is a plus b into a minus b, and we do it this way: a squared minus b squared. So after just, simplifying and everything, I was able to get this thing that we had to prove. Yes, now take a few seconds or a minute to analyze the working, and then let me know if you were not able to understand. Okay, no need to rush. Take your time and then get back to me. I'm right here.
Yeah, okay, miss. I understand. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And Rafe, what about you?
Yes, Miss, I understood.
Okay, very good. Well done. So this was basically the first unit where you were only supposed to understand that what exactly is happening in a right angle triangle. So we know whenever it is a right angle triangle, you guys already know this thing. We can use Pythagoras theorem, and we can use one of the three ratios to find out all the other ratios, because if cos theta is given, you would be having base and hypotenuse side. You can apply Pythagoras theorem, find perpendicular side, and find tan and sine. This is how the story is. Okay, so the first unit was not that important, and you would not be able to find any direct question from past papers because that was something very, very basic. Okay, now at this point we are going to take a small break because this was supposed to be a double session, a 5 minutes break, and then we will start at 23. Okay, it's 2:18 in Pakistan, so it would be some other 18 in your countries, but we would start after 5 minutes. So either you can stay,
Miss,
join. Yes.
why don't you take the class on Friday or Saturday?
Because on Friday, like it's Jumma, so timings would be an issue. One second, let me stop
Miss,
the
like
recording.
in my